Thank you for joining me today, wherever you are today. However you may be joining me, I thank you for joining me today. What we're going to be talking about is two real chapters here that we're going to cover pretty quickly, and I just want to make you aware of that. These next couple weeks, there's a couple things that you need to really understand, but and that is just a couple things, but we're going to really focus on the readings, the selected readings these weeks. So the lectures are going to be rather short. The questions are going to try to be a shorter group of questions here. Okay. Number one, who tied for the presidency in 1800? Aaron Burr and Thomas Jefferson. At that point, they were running it together, but there was no formal process where you could have a president and a vice president. They hadn't arranged that yet, so they both ran together, so they both received the equal number of votes because they won. And then, of course, it went to the House of Representatives, as we all know, because you are all constitutional scholars. That if there's a tie, it goes to the House of Representatives, or if there's not a majority, it goes to the House of Representatives. And in the House of Representatives, eventually Alexander Hamilton, a bitter opponent of Jefferson, threw support behind Jefferson against Aaron Burr, because he believed that Jefferson at least was honest and trustworthy, which proved to be true. How many votes decided who was president in 1800? 250. A change of 250 votes would have changed the course of our nation's history. So interesting. We had Washington first, and then Adams, and they established a central government. But Jefferson was more of he had an idea of promoting less government. And so we established several leaders who immediately established a strong central government. But then we have another leader come in who wants democracy. In comparison, might be today more of a libertarian type. And you can see here how that really influenced our political structure. And if we had another very strong big government type versus a small government type, our trajectory as a nation would have been dramatically changed. What was the naturalization law of 1802? The naturalization law of 1802 was changed from a previous existing law where previously there had been a requirement of 14 years of residence before you became a citizen. Now it was changed to 5 years. Okay. This is some of the first major discussions and arguments and fights over immigration. Remember, at that time, you could come to the United States. They couldn't really stop you in a sense, but coming wasn't a problem. People were allowed to come. They would allow people to come for the most part. But when they came, there was a period of time before you were allowed to become in the civic society, etc. Describe Marbury versus Madison. Let me just mention Marbury versus Madison is a very famous case, and the reason it's famous is not the specifics of it. And so this is what you're going to need to know, not who actually Marbury was or Madison. Marbury versus Madison is the case that really established the Supreme Court as having the authority to review other things. It had the power to overrule stuff based on its constitutionality. All right, this is what gave the power of the court. In this ruling, he tremendously promoted the power, and it's the idea of judicial review. The idea that the Supreme Court alone had the last word on the question of constitutionality. So when we get to Marbury versus Madison, what do you need to know? That the main point there is it established the idea of judicial review, and the idea that the Supreme Court had the last word on constitutionality. What was the Tripolian War? To the shores of Tripoli. That's out of the song in the Marines, the Marine song. Tripoli, the Pasha of Tripoli was they were Muslim. They were Muslim pirates, and they would go and capture, go out on the seas, and they would capture a ships and then sell the sailors, the white sailors, into slavery. And you've probably read some of the readings about some of this. But he would force you to pay if you didn't want your ships to be captured, or so many be captured or ransomed or whatever. You'd have to pay him large sums, and America refused to do this. And instead, they sent some ships over. And basically declared war on him, and basically got freedom for the captured sailors, and established him. But it really established that America was a worldwide democracy, not a worldwide nation, not a democracy, a worldwide country, and a power, and it showed its increasing influence. How did Alexander Hamilton die? Well, he died in a duel with Aaron Burr. Two men were bitter enemies in New York. Hamilton cost Burr the presidency, then he cost him the governorship, and Burr, furious at all the insults and stuff, demanded an apology, or he wanted a duel, because he felt like Hamilton had said some untruthful stuff about him. Hamilton refused, so they went and had a duel. And duel is, in case you don't know, it's where two men shoot at each other to prove, because their honor was besmirched. And in this duel, Hamilton died. It is very possible here that Alexander Hamilton fired his weapon into the air instead of at him, because his son had died in a duel just 3 years prior. But it is a great loss. In multiple ways, one of our brilliant young economic minds, political minds, Alexander Hamilton, passed away. But also one of our tremendous political, we call them connivers, really. But someone who had a lot of talent, just used it in a amoral way for his own gain. And Aaron Burr then saw his, as the vice president, he had murdered someone. But saw his vice presidency go away, and saw his power and political influence, etc., go away. Yeah. What section of the nation, group of people, was bitterly opposed to fighting the War of 1812? The War of 1812. I'm sorry. Let's talk about the Louisiana Purchase first. The Louisiana Purchase. And Napoleon Bonaparte had gained power of the port of New Orleans via Spain. Okay, Thomas Jefferson sent Robert Livingston to France so that they could work out a deal that would allow the Americans to buy the port of New Orleans and as much land to the east of Florida as they could. Well, while they're there, Napoleon offers them the port of New Orleans and basically a massive section of the West, Ohio, Indiana, Kentucky, as all the way to the Rocky Mountains. Basically about half the nation: Missouri, Oklahoma, Arkansas, just all the way out, all the way to the Rocky Mountains, and really, to be honest, almost to California, all the way up north, Montana, etc. And surprised by the deal, they signed the treaty even though they did not have authorization. They came back and they presented Jefferson with it. Jefferson was very worried about it, but eventually he didn't feel like it was constitutionally legal. But he eventually presented it to Congress, saying, "I don't think this is actually constitutionally legal, but I think it's good for the nation." And the treaty was approved by Congress. And while there was questions about the exact technical legality in the sense of it may not being constitutional the way he did it, etc., Everyone agreed it was a tremendous bargain, and no one was in disagreement that this should not happen. Well, a section of the nation and group of people were bitterly opposed to fighting the War of 1812, and that is New England, that's New England and Massachusetts area, the Hartford, Connecticut area, and that is because they had a lot of ties with the British, and they believed that they were more in the right there. In fact, they opposed it so strong. They were pro-British and they were anti-Napoleon. They viewed him as the Antichrist of the age, and they did not want to go to war with someone who was fighting against who they viewed as the Antichrist of the age. They called him the Corsican Butcher. They also opposed the acquisition of Canada, which is they thought that possibly the United States could conquer Canada if they went to war with Great Britain. The reason for the war was, and you'll note this, that the British were just were really capturing the American sailors on the sea and just keeping them. They were not allowing them trade. They were pushing them. They're bullying them. Okay, France had done this, but they worked something out. Now England's doing it. The bullying on the seas was just getting to be too immense, and the Americans had decided this is enough. This is enough. But weirdly enough, the people who were being bullied the most, which were the shippers, the shipping people in the New England, they themselves actually were highly opposed to it, and even as we'll see in the next chapter, considered secession because they were so strongly opposed to this war. That is all for chapter 11. As I said, I'm going to try to keep these lectures short. Again, you may read the chapter and get the answers directly out of there if you could not if you missed any of those answers. Thank you. Have a great day.